So I'd like to invite questions today rather than delivering a Dhamma talk. So if anyone has anything that's really up for you at this time in regard to your practice and meeting, really it's about meeting life, essentially. I would love to engage in that.
Well, I just finished reading perhaps my favorite, and there'll be another one another day, but my favorite book about Buddhism that was written about Ruth Denison, and it was written by Sandy Boucher, who apparently won a United Nations something. And I was just so struck by the freedom of that kind of Buddhism. And I just thought, if I understood it all correctly, you would just say maybe just a few words about how the male Buddhists accepted that she did all these funny things like rolling around on the grass and yoga. And I was just thrilled. I finished it and started it again.
That's great.
Right in the same week.
I think you would have really enjoyed meeting her. She was an amazing woman. Well, basically, I think what happened was that she and her husband both, well, her husband was very interested in Buddhism, and she was, I'm not sure of the exact story, but anyway, she and her husband went to practice with this Burmese monk, and the monk recognized Ruth as having broken through to a certain level of insight. She didn't recognize her husband as having the same level, to her husband's disappointment, but he recognized it in her, and he authorized her to teach. And she had her very unique way of doing that. She was very unique and kind of radical and creative, and she's got the place that she developed is still in the desert in Southern California, Joshua Tree, yeah. And it's kind of funky. It's a bit of a funky old place. And she had this, she was very much in the moment. She was very intuitive, and she was very much in the moment. And she wasn't, she was abiding by, precepts, like ethical precepts, but basically she liked to challenge people and encourage people and get people to loosen up and all this stuff. And I think because she was recognized by her teacher, and she was independent, essentially, she was just like a direct lineage from him. He was a monk, and she wasn't a nun at all. And I think she just had the freedom to do what she wanted. And she was particularly interested in supporting women, because she could see how women had much less opportunities, and that things were sort of done in a rather male way. And so she was very much interested in supporting women, and but not only women, but she was more oriented that way. And she was just like, she was a very interesting woman, actually. I only met her twice, and it was thanks to her that I'm here in some ways. Oh. Yeah. So she recognized, so years ago, when the monks, the Western monks from the lineage that I come from, the Ajahn Chah lineage, established a monastery over in California, every year they would invite nuns from England to come and teach with them at this retreat. And some of the lay women were upset about the discrepancy in the status between the women and the monks and the nuns, which is considerable, particularly in that lineage. And not only in that lineage, but so, Ruth's encouragement was basically if the nuns are going to have any autonomy, they need to have independent financial support. That was her understanding. Because as long as we were with the monks always, we would always stay in the same situation, which is true. And so she encouraged one of her disciples, Jill Boone, to start a foundation. So a few women, like 5 or 6 women across the country, started a foundation together to support the nuns to come over, with the view of one day having a monastery, basically. And so it's thanks to her and Jill that there was a foundation that we could come to, that I'm no longer with now, but that's what supported us for many, many years. So it was her vision and understanding that the women monastics need they need their own support, otherwise they're always going to be under the monks' authority. But I think she had that freedom because she had that freedom, because she was just an independent person who had authority from her teacher, and she did it her way.
And her type of Buddhism was what?
She was Theravada Buddhist, same.
Oh.
Yeah, same lineage. But she wasn't a monastic, so she was just free to, she had more, she used music, dance, and all kinds of stuff that we're not going to be using, but other people can. Yeah, thank you. And she knew how to go right to that point that needed to be attended to. She used to play people off against each other just for fun, just because then you could see it's just egos, But not everybody found it funny.
I wasn't planning on saying anything, but when you said move from your questions or comments and invoke the idea that we're all human. And one of the things that I've really been feeling that I was hoping you could say something about is impermanence. Because everything seems, in part it's my age, in part it's the nature of this town, everything feels very impermanent to me these days, because all around me people are aging, they're crazy, they have dementia, they have cancer. It's sort of like everybody that I know in this town in some ways is affected by that stuff. And also, the world itself seems not only impermanent, it seems to be happy to accelerate. It's like got its foot on the pedal to the metal of impermanence, Just in case you didn't get the point, y'all. Boom, down the road. And I've found myself wanting to put on the brakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wanting to slow down. And in fact, the only time really that I feel like human rather than at risk in some way is when I'm meditating.
Oh, yeah.
So
Why is that it feels different when you're meditating?
Why is it that meditation?
Why is it that it feels different when you're meditating than when you're not? I mean, in terms of relationship to impermanence.
Well, I'm able to find. I don't know if it's really samadhi. I don't know what that's a word, but I'm able to find a kind of a sweet spot more often when I meditate. And I really, really look forward to the sort of refuge that moment makes possible in the midst of watching so much suffering around me and in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think when we meditate, we're attuning to the truth of impermanence, like being with the breath, moving in and out, or just abiding in the present. We're attuned, because the impermanence never stops. Everything is in a state of flux all the time. But we are either attuned to it or misattuned, and most of the time misattuned, I would say. And I think there's a difference between the natural process of impermanence, which is, birth, aging, sickness and death is one way we can see it, and intentional destruction. Those things are not the same. Although, ultimately, destruction is part of nature too. Things get destroyed, but things are impermanent, and impermanence is, and it's never not been this way in the world. Things have been changing all the time, and there are times when it becomes more prominent. So, like for you in your life now, and I noticed shortly after my father died, like a couple of days later, just this real strong sense of like everything I'm looking at is going to end, nothing lasts, you know, and just how I know that intellectually, but it's just a bit more immediate and clear, and that's true, you know. So I think there's how do we meet the truth of impermanence is an important question for each of us. How do we meet that? Because it is real, or I shouldn't say real, but it is happening all the time, and we have to meet that, because it is how it is. And there's a chant that we do usually after someone has died, and it's something like, we chant it in Pali, but it goes something like, all conditions are transient or impermanent. Having the nature to arise, they have the nature to cease. And for one who is attuned to this truth, there is happiness. So this is kind of how it is. So you don't expect there to be happiness. You expect that it's like, no, it shouldn't be like that. But actually, if we're attuned to that, there's a sense of it's all perfect, actually, in that way. It is as it is. It's meant to be this way. But the Buddha is also, he's not only pointing to impermanence, because he points to those three characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. But he's also pointing to the deathless. He also points to the deathless, and he says, for those who frequently reflect on death, you know, contemplate that death can happen at any moment, that reflection, when done in the right way, leads to an insight, an understanding of the deathless, of that which doesn't die. And that's tricky territory to talk about, because you can't call it anything. But you could say, I mean, there are words like awareness, presence. Different people use it. Ajahn Swain talks about consciousness, and other Buddhists would probably not agree with that, but it's a word, you know. So we see that which is constantly changing, and then we recognize. So this everything, you know, this personality, or this body, or my friend, or the place, or even the culture that I thought I was part of, you know, in this country, all of those things are changing. They're not stable, and they're not who and what we are. But there's something that's knowing that. There's a part of our awareness that is knowing all of this, and that's the place of refuge, of safety, of abiding. That which knows the arising and passing away of things.
I can say one more thing. Yesterday I was asked to bear witness to a conversation between a friend and another person who is really crazy and self-destructive. And part of me I would have done it anyway, but part of me was willing to do it simply because I wanted to experience this other person's, I wanted to know it. Not in any kind of perverse way, but simply because I wanted to know it. And I don't know, my thought may have been that I can make better decisions and be more compassionate if I knew it. But it was hard.
Did it make you more compassionate?
It did, but it also made me, it was a little scary, because, the energy that's required for compassion is at times in short supply.
Uh-huh. Then that's why I started with that chant, you know, right. Because it's true, we can be in short supply of any of those, and so we need to cultivate them. I feel, this is my view, you know, some people say you don't need to cultivate them, when the defilements fall away, they'll be there, which is true, but in the meantime I feel like let's bring a bit more of that into the world, you know.
I mean, most charitably put, I was trying to cultivate compassion by being willing to be there and sit. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Have to also have compassion for your own capacity. Yeah. Okay. Did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say something about Ruth Denison.
About Ruth?
Ruth
Oh, yeah.
Denison. Yeah, well, we live in Portland, and I recently learned that the Portland Insight Center she donated a large amount to buy the building, which I wasn't aware of. So
Amazing. Yeah.
So I don't know what else she did.
Yeah.
other than sharing
Yeah.
that kind of resource.
Yeah. I know she also donated to Abhayagiri. There's at least one kuti there that she donated. Yeah.
Basic question. I feel like my body has worked hard in my life, and I can feel like when I'm meditating, I'm constantly trying to remind my belly to just relax, and it always tenses back up. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the belly.
Yeah. Yeah, the belly. It's the power place, for one thing. Yeah, relaxing the belly during meditation or at any time actually is many times in the day is really good, because for two reasons actually. One which I probably don't think is related to you so much, but often for women we think we're supposed to hold it in, and look slim. So that's one thing, to like relax and let it soften. And also it can be a way of getting through life, like hold it, tensing up and strengthening yourself here, and when we relax the belly, when we relax the belly, actually let's just do it and then you can see how it is. I immediately notice there's more room for my breath. So it's not just up here, it can come, the whole body can get involved in the breath. And there's a groundedness and a centeredness that's stronger when the belly's relaxed. It's like all of the good energy here has room, it's not getting squashed. And then if you're used to sort of pushing through and getting not maybe sort of, if you've had to do a lot of overriding, let's say, as parts of yourself, then it can be, when we settle into the belly, nice to see that breath, it can be that there are things that haven't been felt or haven't been noticed that then have room to arise. And they're not always nice, but it gives room for other things just to come up and be known, because we're not in any sort of defensive place, we're relaxing. Yeah, and there are some meditation teachers who emphasize just noticing the rise and fall of the belly with the breath, rather than the nose or the chest. And I've found, I've found that relaxing the belly is very, very important for making room, for all of it, for the whole of the body to be involved in this process of breathing and being alive. But also one needs to have a certain, strength here, like in terms of physically. It doesn't want to be just sort of floppy, and you need some core muscles to keep the back straight and so on. So it's it's not just about relaxing, but strengthening the core muscles is important in through work or through exercise, but then in meditation to soften the belly. Yeah, there was a meditation practice that Ajahn Sucitto used to do: softening, opening, deepening, widening. So if it, like, gradually through the meditation, you start with softening, and then you get into opening, and deepening, and then widening. So you're sort of letting go, gradually letting go of the more contracted doing tendency into more of an open being experience.
Oh, that's really helpful, actually. It seems like a doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which of course is useful, but then you can also learn how to, especially in meditation, it's very good to be able to let that go. Yeah. Yes.
I would really like to hear more about your thoughts on, I love the distinction between impermanence and intentional destruction.
Oh yeah.
We're in a stage of intentional destruction. And
yes. Yeah, the intentional destruction. I mean, I have heard that it is very intentional, actually, that there are, I don't know how, I don't know, I just have heard it, but that there is a movement to try and speed up the end of the world in order for the second coming to happen sooner. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, dear. Yeah, I think that's
a little more disturbing.
it's painful. Yeah, it's very disturbing. It's extremely confused. Yeah, but I think that is part of what's happening right now since some years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very deluded, and I think there are people operating like that, with much power. And yeah, I mean, intentional harm is in direct opposition to being attuned to the impermanence of things. Because when you're attuned to the impermanence of things, you don't need to destroy, you don't need to get rid of, you don't need to annihilate, because all that arises passes away. You can be, it's learning to be with, and then also to cultivate, from the Buddhist perspective, to cultivate what is wholesome, to do that through body, speech and mind, to find opportunities to cultivate the wholesome thoughts, wholesome speech, wholesome actions in the world, and then also the practice of meditation can be part of that. So it can be part of cultivating the wholesome, and it can also be part of ripening wisdom that understands the emptiness of everything. So this is all very tricky territory, when it's picked up by the ego, because like this whole thing with the second coming, so egos and logical minds pick it up and think, okay, let's destroy the world quickly, and then we can, then Jesus will come back, And Buddhists have also made really serious mistakes of, everything's empty, so it doesn't matter if we kill, it doesn't matter if we harm others, that's happened. So this is a misunderstanding of the Dhamma of it, of the truth of it. Yeah. And I don't know what we do about that, actually. I don't have any answers to the disasters that are going on right now. But I think we do have to take care of our own heart and mind, and how we show up in the world. That matters. And prayer, I mean, that's part of it too. Just to put out intention. Prayer isn't really very Buddhist, but to put out an intention, to collect with others who have a similar understanding, and to put out the intention of finding ground and sanity and safety and humanity, and strengthening those qualities. Yeah. I don't know if that's in any way helpful, but that's all I got.
Yeah, very nice. I think when it feels very small to just do it when there's so many things, and
yes,
many of us have traveled and we've been to a lot of these places, and
yeah,
lots of people.
Yes, these are real people, yeah, and lives, and it'll be generational harm, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is where we're at this time, you know. And I think in the US, you know, being American, which I am also, there are certain things have been put in place over the years, you know, with certain actions have been, certain beliefs about America's the sort of identity and the capitalism. You know, there have been certain things have been put in place that, and it's like, okay, now we're experiencing the fruits of some of the really unhelpful, unwholesome, wrong views, really. And here we are in the middle of it, and I don't have an answer as to how to make it stop. You know, I would like to, but
we wish you had the answer.
it would, you know, yeah. I really, really appreciated it. It's come up a number of times that the Walk for Peace monks, you know, what they did, so pure, just pure-hearted, aligned with truth and goodness, you know, and it's like that, the power of that, the power of their integrity and that they just put all of their energy into peace, you know, peace, just even it was just peace in America, you know, that's what they're focusing on, peace here with these people, and how amazingly potent that was, you know, and how many lives that's touched. And you look at that, okay, there's these 19 people and a team of people helping them, and they touched millions of lives, you know. So that's encouraging, that there's, and even though it feels like it was a sort of a blooming, and now like it's maybe like quietening down again, maybe that's just what we have to keep doing, you know, finding how do we show up, you know, what can we offer that's reminding each other of our goodness and of integrity and of kindness, you know, those simple qualities. Yeah. And not to give up on those, because I think that's the danger, that we give up on them because it seems too big, too hard, too much, and then we mustn't do that. And the Buddha actually speaks about not shirking our responsibility to cultivate wholesome states. I kind of like that. Don't shirk your responsibility. This is our responsibility. And there's so many reasons we could have for not doing that, you know, like feeling like it's all too much, or it's not going to make any difference, or even just feeling too lazy, you know. And then he's like, no, don't shirk your responsibility. This is our responsibility. As people who've heard even a glimmer of truth, of Dhamma, of the nature of things, it's our responsibility to cultivate wholesome states as best we can, as often as we can, and stabilize them as best we can, you know. And again, that comes back to those 4 Brahma Viharas that I was talking about, that we chanted in the beginning, because that gives a reminder of what is possible. And those qualities, they are what are left when the defilements of the mind have been cleared away, the grosser defilements of the mind, and those qualities just shine through. They're natural. Yes, please.
I'm curious, you're talking about Ruth Denison, and then we're all talking about destruction. I'm kind of curious if you could speak about creativity. And there was a point kind of when I was thinking a lot about monasticism and how, you know, they don't listen to music and they don't play the guitar and things.
It's true.
And I think in my misunderstanding in some way, I was kind of like, maybe all that stuff is frivolous and I shouldn't do any of that. But I was very kind of stuck in my life too, and I think it was because I wasn't doing that, you know. So I kind of reinvigorated my creative life, and now I just feel amazing. I feel very connected to nature. I feel
good. Yeah.
very connected to people. I mean, I feel really great about it. anyway, you could go in any direction. I don't really have any more to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's not a judgment on those things. And the Buddha used images of like the lute, playing a lute, and just as part of giving teachings. Yeah, it's the monastic life is a thing in itself. So there are joys and challenges in monastic life that are different to the joys and challenges of lay life, and it's a renunciant life. And for some, renunciation is joyful. I mean, it's not always joyful, of course, like anything. But for some of us, there's a freedom and a joy in renunciation that I know for myself I wouldn't be able to find the same level of satisfaction or attunement or whatever if I was not doing it this way. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly this way, but as a renunciant, there's a certain joy that arises for me, a certain freedom that I can enjoy that I wouldn't have if I was living the life I was living before. And I did have a lot of joy and well-being and goodness and fun also, in my life before. But there's a calling to this renunciant path, and it brings a certain. There's a quote which I said in the community here the other day at Wat Suan Mok, where Ajahn Buddhadasa, the place that Ajahn Buddhadasa established in Thailand. There's this little plaque or something, little sign, and it says, "Oh joy at last, to know there is no happiness in this world." So that's that for me is like, oh yeah, that's it.
I'll think about that one.
Yeah, it's really a good one to reflect on. And then for you, like I think it can be really difficult, and I did that for a little while myself before I became a monastic. It can be difficult if you're not a monastic, but you're trying to live like a monastic, but you're not actually, so you're not getting the benefits of either thing. And then what you've done is you've found what works for me, and then you're doing that, and you've found a flow, it sounds like, and an attunement. And that attunement can itself be a teaching, like especially attunement with nature. Nature's teaching the Dhamma all the time, never stops. The teachings are continuously being taught by the trees and the ocean and the grass and the birds. And so, if you're attuned to that, then the truth reveals itself. And then, and you can also know by your own well-being, if there's, although it's tricky because it's inevitable on the spiritual path to go through some difficult times, and sometimes we have to go through them to find what is superfluous that we need to let go of, what are we holding that's in the way. But anyway, that's a very inner journey to know what's the right thing and what's not. And it seems like you found the right qualities for your life. It's never going to be perfect, never. And that is the nature of samsara. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah. And I really appreciate that the Buddha gave I'm going on a bit today, gave the Noble Eightfold Path, because that's for everybody, whether you're in family life or in monastic life. The Noble Eightfold Path is a path that's can be lived, and you can look, how do I meet difficult times, So like the first noble truth, the first fold of the path is pointed to the Four Noble Truths, so how we relate to dukkha, how we relate to difficulty, and also understanding the emptiness of things, and how we, because of craving, because of craving and grasping, we create suffering. We make things more solid than they really are. And then how we use our mind, whether we're cultivating wholesome thoughts or not, that are aligned with the path or not, and then our speech, our actions, our livelihood, and then the effort that we put into, are we putting effort into cultivating wholesome states or not, and what do we do when the unwholesome states arise? Do we just indulge in them or not? And then sati, presence, that we can bring to, which sounds like is sharpened up, actually. And then the samadhi is that deepening of presence in a way into a collectedness. So that's available for everybody.